Minister, look, if you succeed, we all succeed. If you succeed in your endeavour to drive down the virus and to rid this land of COVID-19, then we all succeed, and we can all go back to the type of human relationships and interactions which we've all been sorely missing. We are now in February. In January, we lost over 1,000 people, and we had more infections in January than we had in 2020. And so, clearly, a new strategy is needed. Unfortunately, I don't get from your contribution this morning that you get the sense of the need for a new strategy. Now, over the weekend, the Taoiseach acknowledged that mistakes had been made in December. And I think it's fair to acknowledge that mistakes were made across this chamber in December in terms of what people were calling for and what government did. And if politicians learn from those situations, well, then that's good for politics. I can understand that you get frustrated when people in your own party are peddling misinformation about Monday to Friday only vaccinations. I say that's deeply frustrating. I'd say it's also frustrating when you hear people from the opposition suggesting that vaccinations, that we're at the lowest, we come the bottom of the EU table in terms of vaccinations, which is also untrue. So I appreciate that you are working within a level of misinformation. However, there are things within your government's control, which are making things much worse. And yesterday is a classic example. Yesterday is a classic example because we have a leak from the Department of Education, again, about the potential reopening of schools, which will be of interest, I'm quite sure, to teachers and SNAs and parents across the country who will be dying to know about more information in relation to the potential reopening of schools. This is, again, literally days since we had 1,000 deaths and more infections in January than we had in the entire year of 2020. Another leak from the Department of Education. The same department that can't seem to get anything over the line without making an announcement about it or leaking about it, which again makes the reopening of schools more difficult. And then the Minister for Beer Gardens comes out and furthers his own personal agenda, again making things worse, talking about potentially reopening of family gatherings, of industry potentially reopening, in nowhere recognising the fact that we are in the teeth of a body count. And your legislation next week, apparently, in relation to travel, is going to reference 2 countries. 2. This is your great move after 9 months of recommendations and calls from across this House. The UK are introducing legislation that deals with 33. So why don't we just go to where the UK are now? Why are we always behind? Why don't we become a European leader when it comes to suppressing this virus? There is genuinely no point in giving people hope about beer gardens and family gatherings and schools reopening if we're just going to go back and lock down again in May. There's no point, because people are literally going around the twist. They're finding it extremely difficult to function. And you can't give with one hand and then take away with the other. So, Minister, unless we're serious about driving down this virus as far as it can go, then we're just going to go into a yo-yo effect of reopening and closing, and reopening and closing, and reopening and closing, and then there's a new variant, and then there's a whole new strategy. It's not working. It hasn't worked, and it has to stop. And the things that are within your government's control have to be controlled. No more leaks from departments, and no more self-indulgent press conferences from the Taoiseach, who clearly is not in line with the national effort and is, again, making the entire effort that we're all trying to share across this House more difficult.